The Glendale Archives is one of the eeriest entries to analog horror in years. It's a video journal recorded by the last man on Earth, a nameless subject documenting his struggle for survival and sanity amidst brutal silence. Whatever mysterious force wiped humanity from our cities did so months ago, and these tapes don't offer easy answers to the questions no one is left to ask. What happened to everyone? Why are the so-called nesters roaming our abandoned streets? Who keeps restocking store shelves? And of course, if everyone else is gone, who exactly found this found footage? I'm Crowmudgeon, and today, you and I will be exploring the mysteries behind the Glendale Archives. I'll walk you through each tape, revealing their secrets, and putting together a picture of what might have happened to the rest of humanity. Then, I'll give you my theories about the past and my predictions for what might happen next. Most importantly, I'll tell you what I think is really going on underneath the surface with our mysterious subject.
While our subject may be all alone, you're still stuck on an internet full of people. People who kind of suck. Don't you wish your time online could suck a little less? Unfortunately, that's not possible. You're stuck with me. Unless you use today's sponsor, NordVPN. The internet is a vile place, and scammers plague the sites you love, but NordVPN is one of the best ways to keep yourself safe online. Over the years, I've buried several objects deep in the hills of Appalachia. I wouldn't normally disclose details about the incident online, but NordVPN keeps my data safe, encrypting everything I send and keeping my secrets secret. You'll never find them. But that's not all NordVPN does. If you, like me, love to shop online, you may find yourself sourcing essentials from shops that don't even exist. Regular VPNs can't help here, but NordVPN's fake shop detection feature helps make sure you get exactly what you pay for. And exactly what you deserve. A safe surfing experience on this hellscape we call the internet. You can support the channel and get 4 extra months of NordVPN for free when you go to nordvpn.com/Crowmudgeon and use the code Crowmudgeon at checkout. Or just click the link at the top of the description. Thanks so much to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. And with that, let's get right into our first tape.
The earliest tape we have, titled "The World is Empty, Everything is Mine," follows our subject as he travels north from New York City to his childhood home in the suburbs. The city has been purged of human life, but that doesn't mean the streets are lifeless. Creatures known as nesters now live anywhere people once were. They look like people, but they don't move or sound right. Arguably, the most haunting feature of this empty world is the nightly wailing of the nesters, almost as if they're calling to each other, like semi-human coyotes locating the members of their pack. At night, the nesters explore the hollow city, searching for some unlocked escape from the elements. They gravitate towards places like closets or attics, the darkest parts of a house, where they feel the safest. All too often, our subject has broken into an apartment, believing he was alone, only to wake up to something else skulking about inside his shelter and be forced to sneak off into the night. Recently, however, the nesters noticed the subject collecting supplies from the abandoned businesses near his apartment. He started seeing them around corners, waiting for an opportunity to, well, we aren't told what the nesters might do to our subject, but based on their violent attempts to get inside his home at night, I can't imagine it's anything good. We'll learn more about these creatures soon, but for now, just know that our subject has learned to avoid nesters at all costs, even if that means leaving the city behind. At daybreak, he says farewell to New York and its endless hiding places. Our subject elaborates on why he's chosen to head north as distorted footage from his childhood plays in the background. The big cities have become nester hotspots, but our subject believes the suburbs may play host to fewer freaks. Even if the nesters have taken up residency, he knows all the nooks and crannies of his family home. It would be hard for uninvited guests to stow away in secret. On top of that, our subject says that if he's going to go down, he wants to go down there. From the way he says it, it's obvious he's not looking to die. And honestly, I get it. I'd rather expire at home than in some random, probably dead dude's apartment. Unfortunately, the fastest way home is right through the mountains. He's got about 3 straight days of hiking ahead of him, so I don't exactly blame him for wanting to shorten such a long trip, even if it involves a long hike through the wilderness. Fewer nesters out there, anyway. Much of the Glendale Archives plays out almost like a camping video, with the subject commenting on the weather, enjoying the sights, or passing along his expertise to the viewer. A performance before the haunting backdrop that no such viewer exists. The sun begins to set, and our subject detects a nearby nester. For unknown reasons, the nesters cause some sort of radio interference. Interference that our subject can pick up with a walkie-talkie he keeps on him at all times. Based on the signal, he thinks this one is about 1/4 of a mile out, just close enough to cause concern. The subject wanders away from the nester and into the enclosing darkness of the winter woods, but soon, the wailing begins. The pressing need for shelter forces the subject to stow his camera and consult his map. When the camcorder's meager light rejoins the faint rays of the moon, multiple nesters can be heard screeching through the forest behind our subject. Thankfully, he's managed to stumble upon a house, and there's no one but the door to object to his occupancy. The house is dark, but compared to the woods, it's almost cozy. Or at least, it might be, if not for the obvious signs of life interrupted. Toys lay discarded on the living room floor, as though they were still being played with just before whatever happened. Nonetheless, the subject neglects to comment on them. With a final check of his radio, he determines that the nesters are moving away from the house and turns in for the night. The following morning, the subject wakes up and decides to engage in a little bit of downtime. He brews some coffee, works a jigsaw puzzle, and even plays a little bit of guitar until he notices a large radio by the window and forfeits the illusion of normalcy for the smallest hope of human connection.
Break 19, this is Tricky Spinner, do you copy?
There was no response. Forced back into reality by radio silence, our subject decides it's time to leave. Also, because our subject referred to himself as Tricky Spinner for his radio call sign, I'll be calling him Tricky rather than the subject going forward. Tricky packs his bags and ventures into the melting snow. It's peaceful on the mountain. A place like this is supposed to be empty. During his trek down the mountain, he captures shots that are equal parts surreal and beautiful. The serenity is so distracting that just as quickly as night retreated, it seems to come crashing back down once more. With a hefty hike still separating Tricky from home, he sneaks into a nearby diner. On the inside, it's like everyone just stood up and left, leaving everything running. The tables are set with silverware, and surprisingly, the electricity still works. Tricky helps himself to their surplus of coffee and chats with the camera for a bit before falling asleep in one of the booths. It's not perfect, but it's safe, and it's far from the worst place he's ever slept. Late the following day, he finally arrives at the edge of his neighborhood. With the sun nestling beneath the horizon once more, Tricky is forced to accelerate his approach in checking the house for nesters. Luckily for him, his younger self forgot to lock the basement window, and after a quick check with the radio, he manages to squeeze inside. As he clears each room in turn, Tricky's mind is flooded with memories. He says that it felt like time had left him behind. He gives us the grand tour, explaining what each room used to be, unintentionally highlighting something incredibly strange about the home. It's completely empty. Whereas the other places Tricky stayed seemed almost frozen in time, this house is missing any sign of life, as if whatever had erased his family had also scrubbed every effect of their existence from the home. In some way, however, that almost makes it feel less lonely, Like the mountain, a home like this is supposed to be empty. If anything's out of place, it's Tricky. Besides, more furniture just means more places to hide.
So, this is a great place to nest right here because I can put a fire in this fireplace. I can cook some food on the fire because the gas stove's not working. And here's the big thing. Plenty of routes out. So I can escape through this big door. Plenty of windows. I can escape back through the basement. Or I can go over here in the kitchen where there is 2 exits. I prefer not to go upstairs because that's a place where I've been cornered before. The main thing is there's nobody here. There's no one living here now. So that's good. And that means that I can park up right here. I got some bread, some cheese, some butter, some garlic, and I'm gonna get a good night's rest.
Tricky's prediction of a good night's sleep is upended when he realizes that he's made a mistake. He thought he checked everywhere, but he forgot the first place he should have checked. The basement closet, just across from the window where he first entered the home, contains a nest. Its occupant is nowhere to be found, but who knows when it could come back. An abandoned nest isn't anything uncommon, but you don't become the last man on Earth by making assumptions. Tricky checks for signs the nester might return. The back wall of the closet is plastered with some dark fluid that's been hand-smeared across the wall. Along with the finger-painted filth, he finds a collection of old photos, a sleeping bag, and a small tape recorder. To Tricky, the most concerning find is the sleeping bag. It's extremely rare for a nester to leave their sleeping bag behind. To me, however, the tape recorder and photographs are much, much more interesting. Keep them in mind as we continue. By the end of the video, they'll become very important. Tricky decides that the nest is probably dead, so he plans to stay in the house for a couple of days. Anyway, tonight, there are more important things than monsters at hand. Our boy's got to make himself some grilled cheese.
How many grilled cheese do you want? You're either a smoker or you're a mom. You can't be both.
I can taste that smoke.
Yeah, so there's just like a cooking tutorial in the middle of this video, and it isn't even the only one in the series. Here, Tricky teaches us how to make a straight busting grilled cheese. Step 1? Well, you gotta build a fire, baby. That's right, we're not doing just any old grilled cheese. We're doing campfire toasted grilled cheese. That smoky, savory, roasted grilled cheese. That grilled cheese to make a nester say, please? And let me tell you, that ain't something that can be done with ease. When the pan is hot, add your butter and garlic. Let it start to brown, then slap down those cheesy buns. Watch it close. The fire is an uneven heat source. Lose focus and you'll get a grilled cheese that's half burnt. But hey, that's just fine with Tricky. He's always liked his a little extra crispy.
That is a grilled cheese right there. That's gonna crunch. All right, let's listen to this crunch. Woo! Let's go in. Oh, I can taste that smoke. This is hitting the spot. I can't wait to just get warm and toasty in my sleeping bag. I'm tired. I walked a lot today, aside from the nest in the basement, which I think is dead. This was a pretty normal day, which I don't have a whole lot of those.
Before calling it a night, Tricky tunes in to hear the weather on his radio. A voice crackles through the static, but don't get your hopes up. The weather reports are aired from a number of unmanned meteorology stations across the country, humanity not included. When the report ends, Tricky simply sets the radio aside and leaves it on. Every night, he sleeps with the radio on so he can listen for incoming nesters. He says that he should be able to hear anything within a 5-mile radius. I find this claim a little dubious. The nester on the mountain was only a 1/4 mile away when Tricky mentioned it. But hey, I'm sure he knows better than I do. Tricky snuggles into his sleeping bag until, late that night, he hears something in the basement. Or at least, he thinks he does. When he goes to check,
Hello? I swear I heard something, but I think I'm losing my mind.
it seems like it was nothing. Only, as he closes the door, for a single frame, someone is staring up from the basement at the bottom of the steps. Tricky doesn't notice it, but its presence seems to confirm my suspicions. The radio safety net isn't so secure after all. The very end of this video includes footage I don't yet understand. It's a short message from a woman calling herself the Archivist, the one who collected, edited, and published everything we've seen. That seems to answer our question about who found the footage, but the Archivist may simply serve as a vehicle to deliver the story. I'll talk about her more in the analysis section, so for now, just remember that she exists. Tape 2, The World is Finally Empty, opens by letting us know that it's been 4 days since Tricky started squatting in his childhood home. There are no signs of the nester in the basement, or at least none are mentioned. Tricky finally tells the camera that it's been 81 days since he saw another human. He plans to head further north in search of people, following a map that he recently discovered. There are 3 places he wants to check: a mall, a subway station, and a museum. While he explains his plan to us, we see footage of Tricky playing around in a parking lot somewhere near the city. He pans the camera over to reveal Dix, previously just out of frame, before zooming in on what might be a distant nester, asleep in another shopping cart. Probably best to get a move on. Thankfully, the social centers are only a few miles away, and as always, Tricky has his walkie-talkie to help him avoid nesters. First up is the mall. The mall is vast and open, which could be good or bad. Tricky is less likely to encounter a concealed nester, but there's also nowhere to hide if something goes wrong. On the bright side, the mall is surprisingly lively. It still has working electricity, all the lights are on, and there's even some arcade games running as though nothing is wrong.
Man, this like really makes me hungry because there's a food court here. Makes me think of like Nathan's hot dogs or something. I could really go for one. Don't think that's gonna happen.
Most notably, somewhere in the mall, someone is playing music. Tricky follows the sound. It's the best chance he's had of finding another survivor in months. On his way through the mall, he finds green, well-kept trees so vibrant as to suggest that they're still being cultivated by someone. He finds an office space within the mall with several other hallways and rooms branching off to the sides. Unfortunately, all the rooms are locked. This footage of Tricky exploring the mall was the first I ever saw from the Glendale Archives, and everything is so still and silent, I immediately assumed it was created in Blender, a la Kane Pixels. Then, Tricky just walks into frame. No shoddy green screening, no digital trickery, just a real place, shot with an ordinary camera that truly is as uncomfortably lifeless as it appears. This one shot, to me, immediately makes the series feel magnitudes more real and surreal all at once. Soon, Tricky tracks the music back to its source.
We're getting closer. Seems like where it's coming from. There's absolutely nothing in there. That was a recording of someone who I think has been here in the past.
Whoever left the music playing has been gone a while. Tricky checks around to make sure that no one is hanging out nearby, but he finds nothing. With his hopes dashed yet again, and the day drawing to an end, Tricky decides that his time is best spent elsewhere, partially motivated by the arrival of a visitor. In a supremely casual tone, Tricky admits something horrifying.
I also saw a figure that I've encountered before moving towards me. I call him Mr. Whiteout. He sounds harmless, but I don't know, something in me just doesn't trust it.
An entity he calls Mr. Whiteout showed up at the mall. He says that Mr. Whiteout seems harmless, but I'm confused. Is this a Nestor or something else entirely? None of the other Nestors we've seen have been named, but from the few shots that were shown of Mr. Whiteout, he almost reminds me of the shadow in Tricky's basement. His next stop is the subway, or as he calls it, the underground concourse. The tunnels are predictably about as empty as the mall, but they freak me out way more. Yet again, I find myself taking a step back and considering the production of the series and asking, how was this recorded? How do you fake something like this? The shopping mall, I could kind of understand. They aren't exactly bumping these days. But how can a subway station so close to New York City be this empty? He wanders beneath the city, commenting on abandoned businesses and forgotten murals as he passes them. He talks about how easy it is to get cornered in a place like this, half joking that he'd raid a fast food place and try to fry up a deluxe if it wasn't so dangerous. Meanwhile, the groans of a Nestor can be heard echoing throughout the metro. This isn't somewhere one should stay for very long. After this, Tricky meandered towards his final destination, but is distracted by a strange signal from his radio, prompting him to enter a nearby rundown ice cream parlor. He broke in and helped himself to a tub of ice cream. It's all his, after all. But he lost track of time, only to realize his mistake once night fell. He had stayed out too late, yet again. And this time, there was nowhere safe for him to take shelter. The very ice cream parlor he had been in at nightfall had already been claimed by a pair of distracted Nestors munching away at something in one of the closets. I sure hope that's ice cream they're eating. After a few close calls with Nestors in the darkness, Tricky finally comes across his best option for the night, the enclosed slide in a children's playground. It's a sucky place to sleep, but it's the best he's got. Lying there, slanted upright with his feet exposed to the darkness, Tricky must have missed even the comfort of the diner booths from the last tape. In the end, even if the slide made a crummy bed, at least it didn't turn into his coffin. The sun rose the following morning and signaled that it was time for Tricky to visit his last stop, the museum. The museum, which Tricky also calls the taxidermy house, is arguably the creepiest of the three locations. It's full of stuffed animals and fake people, illustrations of the way our world once was. Obviously, to you or I, these things may seem innocent, but Tricky's hopes work against him. He wants to see movement so badly that he sees it even when there isn't any. His experience of the uncanny is magnified by how lifelike, yet lifeless, the models are. At one point, he approaches an exhibit featuring a pair of woolly mammoths, mother and child.
Hello, mammoth. Don't worry. I'm gonna take your little cub, or whatever you call it.
He just looks so sad. The true horror of the Glendale Archives is most clearly manifest in quiet moments like this one. Escaping subhuman pursuers in the night is undoubtedly difficult and terrifying, but it's also distracting. I think that's part of the reason that Tricky is able to speak so calmly about the nesters. He sees them as a challenge to be overcome. I'm sure that for most viewers, the nesters are the scariest part of the series. However, when Tricky is given the space to comprehend the weight of his loneliness, we see what scares him. Tricky leaves the mammoths behind and continues to film other exhibits throughout the museum. He comes to an exhibit where two loggers are at work upon a pile of felled trees.
I feel like this guy would really hate me if he was alive.
That's kind of a weird comment to make. He just looks focused to me. Why would Tricky think? Tricky continues further into the museum, and at this point, it's clear that he's just enjoying a trip to the museum.
What is this, like Aquatic World or something? One little room for the entire ocean, that's pretty generous. Oh, Model T. Wouldn't mind taking this puppy out for a spin.
If I were in this situation, all social conventions would go out the window. I'd definitely be climbing on the exhibits, messing with all the stuff, and generally acting like a child. Tricky doesn't do that, however. He walks around in the most civilized way you could imagine. He even whispers as though he's trying not to disturb other patrons. Because he already possesses freedom and abundance, what Tricky really wants is normalcy, just as he demonstrated with his puzzle solving and guitar playing in the mountain home. The rare moments like these, where he can pretend nothing is wrong, are deeply important to him. He closes out his trip to the taxidermy house with a shot of a lone, lifeless stag standing proudly in the midst of a quiet meadow.
Alright, I'm gonna get going.
Tricky ends the video by reflecting on the biggest mystery in his life right now, the nesters. He says that all he really knows about them is that they can be temperamental, to say the least. They aren't always hostile, which might explain why the ice cream shop nesters and Mr. Whiteout didn't attack, but they can quickly turn violent, as we'll see in Tape 5. Hope is in short supply after the day's expedition, but Tricky isn't giving up. He plans to take another trip south towards the water. Eventually. Right now, he needs time to find the courage to face disappointment yet again. Tape 3, titled The Nesters Found Me, was the first video posted to the Glendale Archives channel, but it marks the middle of our timeline thus far. It starts with Tricky mentioning that it's his 8th day in his childhood home. So much for staying just a couple of days. Having a consistent shelter has enabled him to walk the line between self-care and self-sabotage. Using water and electricity for bathing or cooking was one thing, but the house lights may as well be a dinner bell for nesters, especially at night. Tricky took great pains not to attract attention, only to screw it all up by accidentally leaning against a light switch one night. Now he's started seeing nesters lurking in the woods just behind his house. The one he managed to capture on tape appears to be a tall, gray, hairless man with a wide smile. He mentions later that their height is typically 7 feet and 6 inches, which immediately makes the nesters way more intimidating than I thought, and way scarier than they have any right to be. Worst of all, Tricky lost track of the nester and has no idea where it went. Thankfully, he attended the Kevin McAllister School for Brutalizing Home Intruders, and most of this tape is spent rigging the house with traps. Before that, however, he travels to the grocery store to pick up chicken and Parmesan so he can make his favorite dish for dinner. You'll never guess what it is. I'll give you a hint. It's chicken parmesan. The entire store is well lit and well stocked, but completely devoid of human life. As he gathers his ingredients, he pays close attention to the darkest portions of the store. This much food is bound to attract the occasional nester. Which, speaking of, where is all this food coming from? I wouldn't really question it if our boy was grabbing canned goods and other non-perishables, but he's getting like raw chicken. Unless fresh food just magically appears on the shelves, someone is restocking it. And with everything we've seen so far, I'm not sure which I'd sooner believe. After hearing some unsettling sounds behind the butcher's counter, Tricky wraps up his shopping trip, being sure to set out some money by the cash register before he leaves. He really doesn't have to do that, but then I guess the money isn't really worth keeping anymore either.
You never know.
Back at the house, Tricky has identified 3 places that are just aching for a break-in. Firstly, the easiest place for a nester to sneak in is the basement window, the very same Tricky used when he arrived at the house. Since the window has no lock, he sets up a tripwire trap. Not a wire that triggers a trap, but literally just a wire that you trip on and fall onto a knife. What kind of cartoon bull? The next weak point is the basement door, which is so warped from age that it no longer fits the door frame and therefore cannot be locked. It's okay though. Our man has a plan.
If a nester enters through here, they'll hear a tape recorder in the next room playing my voice saying the following.
Don't hurt me. Don't come in here, please.
The recording will lure them deeper inside, right into a sensor-triggered assault.
But, you know, I'm starting to get a bad feeling about the efficacy of these traps. The third and final weak point is the porch passage door, which leads to the broken basement door. The trap for this one, and I think you're really going to like this, is a handful of matches taped to the door so that they hopefully catch on fire and ignite a leaky bottle of lighter fluid that's taped kind of close to the matches. This dude's going to die, isn't he? But Tricky ain't dying on an empty stomach. No, sir, it's chicken parm time. He goes above and beyond with this cooking segment, giving us an aerial view of the cutting board. With every step towards cheesy, crispy goodness, he explains how each technique will improve the final taste or texture. Tricky fries his chicken, puts the parm and chicken parmesan, and tucks the fillets in the oven to broil. While the cheese gets gooey, he sets up camp in the living room, starting a fire and rolling out his sleeping bag. He does some push-ups to pass the time before heating his marinara. Once his food is ready, he puts special care into plating it up nice.
I'm so hungry. Let's see how this tastes. It's amazing. That guy really freaked me out outside. I think that anxiety just takes a lot out of me. I'm glad I made 2. There's like nothing like really good chicken parm.
As he finishes his fireside meal, Tricky says that he misses eating food that someone else cooked for him, but that chicken parmesan never really turns out right unless you make it yourself. That seems to set his mind on the past, before everyone disappeared.
Man, I'm lonely tonight. Particularly lonely. Just sort of missing some camaraderie, I think.
Paradoxically, Tricky wasn't a huge fan of people when they were still around.
Tell you what I don't miss about people right now? It's feeling in debt to people. You know, emotionally more than anything.
So often, others acted entitled to his time, like predators hungrily gobbling up as much of his existence as possible. He hated jobs for being more about looking busy than actually being productive. You might get all your work done in a couple of hours, but unless you put on a good show for the next 6 hours, your boss would be mad that he didn't squeeze your time for all it was worth. It was all just so fake. It didn't stop at work, though. People used to pester Tricky about getting a cell phone, but he never did. He didn't want to be seen as available all the time.
Getting a cell phone felt like it was inviting people into my life on demand, and I didn't want that. Just like, it's not natural for people to have that kind of access to another person. It feels like modern day communication was the thief of life.
He says that if somebody asked for his time and he didn't want to give it, he would sometimes just lie and say that he was already busy. He wonders if that was selfish of him, if he should have just been honest that he needed to relax. But that never felt like a good reason to disappoint someone. Tricky was a people pleaser, someone who takes responsibility for the emotions of everyone around them. But when everything feels like your fault and even the shallowest interactions become exhausting, being alone is just easier. When you're alone, you can just rest without constantly trying to grow as a person.
Maybe the truth is I really was afraid I was incapable of connecting with other people the way I wanted to. That I would never feel close to my family and my friends, not the way I wanted to.
It's hard to know how much this perspective damaged Tricky's relationship with those closest to him. He convinced himself that his family just wanted to use his time, not enjoy his presence, because then it was easier to pull away. In this, I relate to Tricky pretty strongly. Don't get me wrong, I love people and I'm not particularly avoidant, but I also tend to be a people pleaser. And when people ask for my time, I feel like I need a valid reason to turn them down. That said, it's important to know that you don't need a good reason to say no to being taken advantage of. But then, knowing when you're being taken advantage of can be hard.
You know, some days this self-hatred really runs so deep, and I still can't picture people actually wanting to talk to me just to talk to me. It's safer to believe that everybody is a time-sucking vampire than to actually risk rejection.
He doesn't know when he became so guarded, but Tricky can't remember a time when he ever truly felt safe around other people. He always thought that if the pain ever got too bad, he would talk about it, share it with someone. And then his brother died. The hurt was overwhelming. But rather than motivating Tricky to reach out to someone, it only pushed him deeper into bitterness, isolation, and fear. That's why Tricky can't give up the search for other survivors. He needs someone to share the burden with him. To prepare for the day he sees people again, he quotes a mantra to himself every morning. I am likable, and I attract genuine connection.
But when people enter the picture, everything surfaces. Resentment, worry, doubt, fear. Giving my time forced me to confront all of that. And it pushes me to speak up when staying quiet would just feel so much more comfortable and safer. So yeah, I'm protective of my time. Not a good that's doing me now.
As his spontaneous therapy session comes to a close, Tricky slips into his sleeping bag, snuffs out the fire, turns on his radio, and drifts off to sleep. Until 2:36 a.m., when an inhuman scream rises above the hiss and hum of the radio. The sound escalates as Tricky investigates the basement door. Somehow, the matches and lighter fluid trap actually worked, proven by the flaming nester writhing in the yard. The screen glitches, and the episode ends. We pick up again in tape 4, the shortest released so far, with Tricky having returned to the mountain home from tape 1 to reflect on the feelings festering within him. Being so supremely isolated makes it hard to move on from past pains, but it makes them much easier to ignore. There's no judgment, no outside expectation to grow or change. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and that's exactly where our subject finds himself now. As the title of this episode suggests, Tricky doesn't want to get better. While he explains his feelings, he makes 2 vague references to addiction. It sounds like Tricky may have found some self-destructive ways to cope before the world went silent, but he isn't very specific. Whatever it was hurting him and the people around him. But he wasn't willing to change. The idea of telling somebody that horrified Tricky. It felt entirely unacceptable to say he didn't want to work on it, but it was the truth. A truth he never found the courage to share before it was too late. Ironically, he was scared that if he refused to change, people would abandon him.
It opens the door for somebody to finally say, "You're right. You're not worth it if you don't behave."
He wonders where we even get our ideas of good and bad. Some things, like natural disasters or even death itself, are called bad, even though they really aren't. They may be scary or unknown, but they aren't bad. They just are. He wonders how much he's changed himself to be what other people want him to be. People who aren't even around anymore. He comforts himself with the knowledge that he doesn't have to be anything anymore. Really, this new world has helped him recognize that he never had to be anything, even before he was alone.
Makes me wonder why I didn't allow myself to do it earlier. Makes me wonder why I didn't just maybe pretend like people were gone all along.
The episode is ushered to a close as a nester emerges from the woods. A nester who has an important part to play in the next tape. Tape 5 begins with Tricky telling us that he's been attacked. It seems like he's fine, but from the visuals we're shown, I'm guessing the nester is not. The day began with a quiet morning of coffee, contemplation, and cookies. This is the simplest recipe so far. Just peanut butter, sugar, and an egg. Amidst his mixing, a nester announces itself with a wail at Tricky's door. However, Tricky is unfazed, and he gets right back to baking. He rolls the dough into balls and presses them flat with a fork. The cookies chill in the fridge while Tricky begins a walk up north. Curiosity has led him to a new location from his map. After passing some nesters, he arrives at a place he calls the facility. It's clear that this was some sort of art installation. Scattered heaps of odd geometry litter the landscape alongside stranger structures. One of the weirdest is a long shaft with a goat's head on one end and a single wheel on the other, like a rattle for a giant demon baby. Then there's this two-dimensional house.
This is a really interesting figure here. This looks like some sort of like a colonial building that's melting.
Tricky treats the facility like an adult playground. He's reminded of adventures with others and wishes he could laugh with other people again. In particular, Tricky seems to miss his family. He recalls a prank he once played, where he began to imitate his father. At first, he started dressing like him and answering to his name, Gale. Soon, however, he started sleeping in his father's bed, and even went to the point of making a copy of his social security card. His family didn't seem to find any of it as funny as Tricky did. They thought he took it all a little too far. It seems that even Tricky's happy memories with people are mired in conflict. He stops at a collection of wooden beams laid out in rectangular patterns and sits down to enjoy some hash browns. He notes that many markets still have electricity, but he doesn't speculate as to why. To this day, this is one of the biggest questions I have about the series. Who's maintaining everything? Unless the cities are running on the borrowed time of a dying power grid, someone is keeping the lights on. Surely it isn't the Nesters, and Tricky's hands are full with his own house. This is one of those points that I hope we'll receive more information about in later tapes. As he journeys to another area of the facility, he remarks that he's been feeling especially jumpy lately, owing to the Nesters near his home. While not many of them have noticed him, he's still shaken from the one that was burned to death in his backyard. Such a close call suggests that it might be time to upgrade the house's defenses. Tricky climbs through a few more structures. A small round building that looks like the skeleton of an unfinished home, another structure made from a collection of concrete walls skewered with enormous steel shafts, and a set of stairs that leads to nowhere. From the top of these stairs, he points out distant power lines and tells us that they're close to his house. Finally, Tricky shoots some basketball at a tall, tree-like structure with branches that terminate in hoops. When he finally pulls himself away from the facility, the sun is beginning to set. Yet again, he's lost track of time. That's when it happened. Tricky wandered through the darkness, foregoing the aid of his walkie-talkie. The light of his camera flashed back and forth through the falling snow until it revealed a Nestor standing no more than 10 feet from Tricky. It sprang for Tricky immediately and set after him with snapping teeth. They fought, and though Tricky managed to escape unscathed, he was unable to fully shake the Nestor from his trail. Though the Nestor is only shown for a moment, we get a pretty good look at it. It's wearing a hospital gown, and its pose, hands over its ears, mouth frozen in a silent scream, is the same as the Nestor we saw at the beginning and end of Tape 4. I believe that this Nestor, who I call the patient on account of its clothes, likely started following Tricky after his last trip to the mountain home.
There was something different about this Nestor, though. I kept thinking I lost him, and then I'd see him again. Usually they forget quickly, but not this one. I was able to gain some distance between me and it. Luckily, it had a very distinct sound, so I could track its distance from me on my CB radio.
The attack has left our subject feeling disturbed, so he feels the need to engage in some extra R&R. He runs through a market on his way home for soaps, body washes, and lotions. He swipes half the skincare aisle and bails, but fears that the patient is still following him. Tricky couldn't afford to ignore the threat. He needed to eliminate it. Recently, he's endeavored to improve the defenses around his dwelling, and compared to the last batch of traps, these are a little less whimsical. Tricky is far from a gun guy, but dire times warrant drastic measures, and a quick visit to the local Bass Pro Shops gave him as much free firepower as he could carry. Before leaving, Tricky films each taxidermized animal as if he's just waiting for them to move, just as he did in the museum.
I was able to rig a fully automated frontline shooting system that I could control from the comfort of my home. All a Nestor needs to do is walk in front of the infrared center and boom.
The next traps were much simpler. The first being an array of mirrors placed across his property. Nestors have poor eyesight and, frankly, aren't particularly smart. Mirrors are confusing for them, and once a Nestor spots its reflection, it will attack the mirror, shattering it and likely cutting itself on the glass shards. Finally, Tricky rigs a sensor under his welcome mat to trigger an alarm when stepped on. If a Nestor gets close, just as one did earlier that morning, the alarm will play and draw the Nestor's attention away from the house. With full confidence in his defenses, Tricky treats himself to a shower and bubble bath, complete with various cleansers and ointments to rejuvenate his skin. Just like his cooking tutorials, he takes joy in explaining each step of his relaxation process to the camera. He mentions needing to cut his hair soon, but admits that he misses salons. In particular, having another person wash his hair and scrub his head. Based on his earlier comments, an interaction with another person and the experience of physical contact without the stress of expectation must have been very valuable to Tricky. Now, it's just another thing he has to do for himself. After the shower, Tricky slips into the bath, practices some mindful breathing, and slaps a couple cucumber slices over his eyes. That's how you know he's really relaxed. Even so, his serenity is interrupted as Tricky once again recalls the Nestor attack. Somehow, he always knows when an attack is coming. The air changes, and there's a sensation like a dose of Novocaine wearing off.
I've made the mistake of ignoring that feeling in the past, and it's almost got me killed every time. A part of me wants to pretend that things are normal, and that feeling, it is anything but.
As he finishes applying his potions, he explains some of the differences between Nestors. Those found to the south are taller, faster, and stronger, but they're almost completely blind. If you can avoid them, they're harmless. But if you cross their path, the worst thing you can do is run.
Running doesn't help. Running only tells them who you are.
His experiences with the patient have made Tricky wonder if different Nestors may have unique abilities. Just as southern Nestors are strong yet slow, the patient seems to be the first of a sort of Nestor with uncanny tracking abilities. Every time Tricky thought he had lost the patient, it would somehow find him again. Even now, he's certain that his bald, pale stalker is making its way to the house. But then, that's what the traps are for. The hard work of surviving has already been done. Now, all Tricky has to do is live. He shows us that after his return trip to the mountain home, he recovered the CB radio from Tape 1 and has set it up in his family home. He sits by the radio with a plate of the cookies from earlier and begins taunting the Nestors outside his window. It seems that, just as Nestors transmit their cries over the radio waves, they also receive signals, enabling the radio to work as both a detection device as well as a lure for Nestors. As counterintuitive as it may seem, Tricky actually wants as many Nestors coming to him as possible. With the upgraded network of traps, he can eliminate the Nestors outright rather than needing to avoid them every time he leaves. Tricky seems quite happy with the fruit of his labor as, in the background, we can hear both the alarm and the occasional gunshot.
What's up, fuckers?
Hey out there, if you're looking for companionship, do I have a deal for you? I know just the place. There's a big house on top of a hill not too far. That one Nestor who was following me had a very distinct sound. So if I hear him, I'll know. You hear that alarm? You hear it?
One was on my front doorstep.
Not today. Not today. Get out of here.
Finally, Tricky hears the unique call of the patient. He was absolutely right about it following him all the way home. After briefly taunting him, the Nestor trips the first traps. And with that, the tape ends with the death of the mysterious patient. The last tape follows in the footsteps of Tape 4, being a shorter, more focused exploration of our subject's emotions. This time, it's focused on the darkest parts of his experience, his fears, his regrets, and of course, his loneliness.
I've always felt alone. Even before all this. Like I won't be okay.
As we've seen before, when the Nestor threat is less present and the quiet sets back in, Tricky's mind returns to someplace darker than a world full of monsters. The days when it's a challenge just to survive, when Tricky has to fight for his life, the world somehow makes more sense. Unfortunately, even if he could find people, they terrify him.
I feel threatened by everyone. You know, I had girlfriends, family, friends, a recovery network. I could have shared all of this with them. I could be the biggest success or the biggest failure, and they'll always be with me. If only I let them in. But I chose to keep them shut out, and now I feel alone deeply.
It just never felt like the right time to share his burdens. But now, after everything has ended, after everyone is gone, does time mean anything at all? Before all of this, life was like a game. The more you lived up to other people's ideas of who you could be or what you should do, the more successful you were, and the better they felt about their own diversions from the emptiness of existence.
Don't go after your dreams. It's not practical. Get a good job working for someone else. Take a vacation once a year. Marry young. Get a hobby. This is as good as it gets.
Eventually, Tricky got tired of playing the game, of acting like he was happy with his life the way it was, while pushing down his discontentment and fear. He wanted something better, but he was afraid that he would never have the agency to choose something better.
What I'm really afraid of is life having its way with me. I want proof from life that I'm going to be okay with what it does with me. I feel like I should have a say. It's my life.
Some of what Tricky says here seems to hint at the nature of the world we find him in. He says that whatever this world is was given to him. He didn't create it. For this world to be given implies a giver, which seems to suggest that some entity intentionally placed Tricky into the position he's in. For the first time in these tapes, Tricky almost seems willing to face the reality of his cruel, cold world.
I have control of so little. Some days I fight it. Other days I check out completely. Hide. As if I can pause life. Then I come out and I try again. And I get eaten up and spit out one more time. I'm always pausing to lick the wounds I received, trying to continually fight a monster. Anyway.
In a genre where characters are often an afterthought, the Glendale Archives devotes its entire runtime to the psychology of a single person. Tricky's tapes offer us a grounded exploration of loneliness, exhaustion, and mistrust, issues that affect us profoundly, even when we're surrounded by other people. By placing a recluse into this position of ultimate isolation, the Glendale Archives showcases the nuanced struggles of human interactions as not many stories do. Tricky's journey to reconcile his need for intimacy with its associated aches highlights one of life's cruelest contradictions. People can make you miserable, and so can their absence. Humans exploit, betray, and violate one another, usually those closest to them. Such sins inspire isolation, tempting us to forgo the highs of intimacy for fear of the lows. But the ache of being alone has a uniquely eternal texture. It's the feeling of being forgotten, a sentiment that scrapes out your very soul and leaves you utterly hollow. Every chance you take on another person is a risk. If you could cast a spell that made everyone like you and treat you well, they wouldn't like you for who you are, or treat you with dignity because you deserve it. They would only tolerate you because they had to. There is no such spell, no guarantee that people are going to like you or treat you well, but the possibility of loathing supplies love its sweetness. It's clear that Tricky still misses people, even though many of his interactions with them were hurtful. In a hollow world that is filled with the echoes of its missing inhabitants, every vacant building, every empty street silently mocks him for wanting so desperately to be alone. He searches for other survivors, knowing that success will launch him back into the same struggles he grappled with before he was alone. Judgment, pain, and loss. How do you cope with that? One question that has echoed in my mind since the first tape is this: who is Tricky recording these videos for? Why does he expend the effort to share his survival tips, skincare routines, and even recipes when no one will ever see them? The key to answering this question lies in our subject's psychology. Between setting traps and scavenging for food, Tricky has proven he can take care of himself. But in every episode so far, Tricky has still found himself in a position of significant danger. The clearest example comes from tape 2, when he spent so long breaking into the ice cream parlor that he had to take shelter in a playground. On the surface, it seems so irresponsible. A nester could have easily achieved his extermination that night. Something similar happens in tape 4, when Tricky allows himself to be spotted at the mountain home by the nester that attacked in tape 5. From the cooking tutorials, to his time exploring the abandoned museum, to the risky skincare raids, we've seen that as often as he can, Tricky will make an effort to pretend that nothing is wrong. However, as counterintuitive as it may seem, these rare opportunities for normalcy are just as important for Tricky's survival as avoiding nesters or even eating. Optimism is an oft-neglected necessity for survival. Every fireside heart-to-heart with his imaginary viewer is a chance for Tricky to care for his mind, not just his body. Every time he turns on the camera, he feels a little more hope and a little less alone, an imperfect release from the unbearable silence. For Tricky, the point is just to talk about the nesters, about himself, about anything. He may hope to find others. He may even need to find others. But the point of these videos isn't to create some product that will be of use to someone else down the line. These videos aren't for anyone else. They're for Tricky.
And I just want to honor those emotions and share them with someone because it helps me feel less alone.
I think it's fair to say that after loneliness and fear, the most prevalent negative emotion that Tricky feels is boredom. Without other people, the only way for Tricky to occupy his time is with material diversions. On the bright side, Tricky's options are unlimited. Every child who's ever walked down the toy aisle in Target has fantasized about taking every object their eye fancies. I mean, I'd get a solid few months of entertainment from building every Lego set in production. However, when the entire world is at your fingertips and everything is yours, pretty soon it sucks the joy out of owning anything. I mean, consider how many of us have bookshelves covered in unread books, or Steam libraries full of unplayed games. Limitation breeds interest, and when your access to everything is unlimited, interest becomes exceptionally hard to establish. For Tricky, one of the most important reasons for making these videos is that they're fun. And that's what makes this series truly special to me. The horrors are relegated to the background, while the focus is placed on comparatively trivial things like cooking or skincare. Most of the time, we're just watching Tricky goof around, but that only makes the things he's trying to ignore feel much more sinister. These videos are Tricky's escape. They're the only thing in his life that he can control, and as such, they'll never contain anything he doesn't want to see. Tricky refuses to elaborate on issues like Mr. Whiteout's continuous pursuit or the origins of the nesters, or, most importantly, the change that set all of this off. He isn't interested in reliving the events that shook his world. I don't believe we're seeing the worst of what this world has to offer. The strangest, most unnerving aspects are hidden from us, and the horrors we're shown are only a neutered presentation of the real nightmares. As new episodes are uploaded, we'll find our most sought-after answers where Tricky isn't willing to look. To see the truth, we're going to have to ask, what aren't we being shown? The most mysterious part of the story so far is its beginning. Tricky is content to speak about the world before or after the change, but its nearest surroundings are a total dark zone. Our earliest tape comes about 3 months after Tricky's last human encounter, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's been 3 months since the world went silent. We're left with several questions about whatever apocalyptic event changed the world so radically. Did everyone disappear at once, or were there originally other survivors? Did Tricky's skills help him to survive when no one else did, or was he spared for some reason from an otherwise inevitable fate? And of course, how are the Nesters involved? The origin of this story is still obscured, but I think our best chance at putting together a picture of what might have happened comes from tape 1. First, I want to look at Tricky's footage from the mountain home. From the way that the home seemed so untouched, I believe that whatever happened to humanity happened quickly. In fact, the whole world appears to be almost entirely untouched. If we were looking at a world where society had slowly degraded, there would have been chaos in the streets before the population got this low. We'd be seeing a lot more broken windows and far fewer supplies on store shelves. This isn't a world where desperate people picked apart anything they could to survive, which leads me to believe that this world ended without anyone having a chance to react. But then, where did everybody go? The city and suburbs have been abandoned, not obliterated. It's not like the streets are piled with bodies or the roads running red with blood. The people must have gone somewhere. Many may suspect some sort of rapture-like event, where some sort of entity swept away all life from the planet based on some criteria. However, that runs into 2 problems. First, why would Tricky specifically be left behind? And second, where did the Nesters come from? Any adequate theory about the apocalyptic conditions of the Glendale Archives will need a good answer to both of these questions, and I don't think that the rapture theory can answer either of them without extensive speculation. To the first point, I don't see any reason that Tricky would be singled out by some divine entity. He's a pretty average dude. If he didn't make the cut, regardless of the entity's criteria for judgment, he'd have had plenty of company. And to the second point, I don't see why an entity so set on scouring people from the planet would turn right around and populate it with Nesters, especially considering that Nesters may not be so different from people as we first thought. Throughout the series, Tricky has talked about the Nesters almost as if they're animals. Actually, he seems to think even less of them than animals. This dude would definitely cry about killing a deer, but he has no qualms about killing Nesters, even laughing to himself when they get caught in his traps. Based on everything we've seen, where do Nesters actually fall on the spectrum between man and beast? Back in the first tape, I told you to pay specific attention to the nest in Tricky's basement. I was extremely surprised to find the Nesters' home so furnished, for lack of a better word. It's smeared its walls with hopefully not doo-doo, which is pretty gross, but it's also sleeping with a sleeping bag, and it seems to be collecting photos. Photos which it's managed to keep perfectly clean. That's not just a random object that was lying in the closet when the Nester got there. It's a carefully preserved treasure, and to me, that implies a degree of consciousness that Tricky doesn't ascribe to the Nesters. At the very least, its behavior is in line with a higher-minded creature, such as a raven or crow, creatures known for collecting items in just such a manner. There's another object, however, a tape recorder. To me, this is the most important item in the nest, because it seems to have a recording from the Nester on it. Tricky only plays it briefly, but in that short recording, we hear its voice. Not the same unintelligible wailing we've heard from other Nesters throughout the series, but human speech. I'm sorry, it repeats, voicing its regrets to the only thing that will listen, an inanimate device that, though totally lifeless, makes the Nester feel a little less alone. Sound familiar? Every object in the nest relates back to some behavior that we've also seen from Tricky. The most obvious is the sleeping bag.
It's just they never leave their sleeping bag. They never leave their pillow. I mean, why would you do that unless you were coming back.
Likewise, Tricky sleeps in a sleeping bag all the time. It reflects the fact that he's never been able to stay in one place for too long. The fact he's been able to sleep in the family home for so many nights now is far from normal based on his earlier comments. Even when he first arrived, he only planned to stay for a few nights. As of now, he's been squatting for at least a week or two, but before that, his post-apocalyptic life was spent breaking into apartment after apartment, searching for a place to hide until he was inevitably forced to move on, all the while bringing along his sleeping bag, a lone constant in his ever-shifting environment. And then there's the photos, a relic of a world gone by. Just as the Nestor's photos point back to a time when life was better, so too does Tricky's childhood home contain endless reminders of the way things once were. The first thing he does upon arriving is to walk through the house, checking for nesters, but also reminiscing about his experiences in every room. Finally, there's the tape recorder, which seems to be serving a similar role to Tricky's camera. Granted, Tricky speaks more eloquently to us than the Nestor to its tape recorder, but the sentiment is similar. Both beings are racked with regret, left with only a sleeping bag, a box of memories, and a precious, mindless listener. It could be that the creature in Tricky's basement isn't a Nestor. After all, Tricky didn't detect the creature with his walkie-talkie, but we very clearly saw someone at the bottom of the basement steps. I still have my doubts about Tricky's radio detection method, but it would answer quite a few questions if this basement squatter was actually another survivor. Firstly, that would be the easy way to explain away this Nestor's aberrant behavior. It doesn't act like other Nestors because it isn't a Nestor. Likewise, it would also circumvent the issue of Tricky being left behind because he wouldn't be the only survivor. But then, why wouldn't they approach Tricky? You'd think that anyone in this situation would jump at the opportunity for companionship, but since the first tape, we haven't seen this survivor even once. If this truly is a person, they don't seem interested in connecting with Tricky at all. So let's assume it isn't another person. Maybe the Nestors are far better at imitating humans than we've been led to believe. They aren't simply mindless monsters. They're intelligent. And that brings up some concerns about Tricky's careless extermination of the Nestors around his property. Sure, they may be dangerous, but clearly so is Tricky. To be so nonchalant about killing them sheds some doubt on our subject's mental stability. Tricky may be acting like everything is normal, but something inside of him has broken. Either he wants to ignore how much he has in common with the Nestors, or he just doesn't care. And honestly, I don't know which would be worse. Whatever the case may be, my biggest concern is that the similarities between Tricky and the Nestors may go beyond simple imitation.
So, this is a great place to nest right here because I can put a fire in this fireplace. I can cook some food on the fire if the gas stove's not working.
I fully believe that Tricky himself, in some sense, is a Nestor. Don't get me wrong. There's a huge difference between our boy here and a creature like Mr. Whiteout or the Patient, but there were also undeniable similarities. We'll need more tapes to release before we can come to a really solid conclusion, but something is happening with Tricky that isn't normal. Based on his speculation that some Nestors might have unique abilities, it could be that Tricky is one such Nestor, uniquely intelligent compared to his kin. That would explain why Tricky seems so much more present and less animalistic than the others, and it would also explain why he isn't affected by mirrors in the same way as other Nestors. But there's one big problem. If this is the case, Tricky himself seems entirely unaware of his origin. He seems to have a clear memory of a time before there were Nestors. Could all those memories be fabricated? I don't think so, and unless he imagined an entire childhood, he couldn't have always lived as a nester. He had to be truly human at some point in his life. Instead, we see Tricky, a human, becoming more and more like the nesters as he lives alongside them. Life is easier when the silence gives way to the animal instinct for survival, when Tricky doesn't have to think about growing or changing or being anything for anybody.
I know all these things that I'm trying to keep away are life molding me. And what if I don't like what life molds me into?
What if he were to let go of those things that hurt him entirely? If he stopped thinking, reflecting, remembering, just how different would he really be from the odd entities listlessly roaming the streets? If he continues to lose his humanity, as we saw with his apathetic slaughter of the nesters in his yard, we may see the line thin even further as the series goes on. Still, that doesn't answer our questions about where the nesters came from or why Tricky was the only one waiting to greet them. So, I'd like to take the speculation a step further to share my favorite theory. This entire section of the analysis is highly speculative and very well might be completely wrong. I don't really have fantastic evidence to support what I'm about to say, but hey, sometimes you gotta go out on a limb to get the juiciest fruit. Here's what I think might have happened. In the months preceding the first tape, something happened to the majority of the population, and the remnant of humanity was changed. Those who remained lost a part of what made them human. The changes were mostly mental. People were left unable to think clearly, and the rare moments of lucidity were painful. They were haunted by loss and overcome with regrets. Now that the old way of life was gone, they had nothing but time to reflect on what they wished they had done differently. What stung worse than regret, however, was loneliness. I believe that each nester, not just Tricky, may believe that they are the last living survivors of the human race. Something about the nesters' mental change caused simple distrust to evolve into a total inability to recognize humanity in other beings. Anything human took on a new, monstrous quality, and the entire world became a much more frightful place for its lonesome inhabitants. People drew apart from each other, forsaking connection altogether and dooming our race to a slow, cold extinction. Tricky is just one individual suffering from this mental change affecting his entire species, which makes his moments of glee as other nesters die on his doorstep all the more harrowing. He's not killing nesters. He's killing the very survivors that he's searching for, still choosing to be alone, even when the loneliness is the very thing that's killing him deep down. Likewise, every threat in his environment, every nester that has ever attacked him, is really just another person, desperate for connection but incapable of recognizing the opportunity for it. That's why I think this is the loneliest world in analog horror. It's a world full of people who are desperate not to be alone, but who can't help but attack anyone they meet. As for what caused this change, I'm not really sure. It could be supernatural, or even the result of a disease. The patient's clothing may be intended to imply the latter, although that might be reading a bit too much into things. Regardless, I think it's virtually certain at this point that the ties between the nesters and humanity run very deep. I have one final theory to share with you, and one final promise to keep. I said before that I would come back to discuss the Archivist again in the analysis, and now's the time for it. My previous theories are based on the assumption that the Archivist is not canon, but I also want to include a theory in case the Archivist is a real character within the world of the Glendale Archives. If this is the case, then I think Tricky's title as the subject becomes very interesting, because it almost makes this whole thing seem like some sort of experiment. Based on Tricky's comment in Tape 4 about wondering why he didn't just pretend everyone was gone sooner, I started to wonder if that might actually be exactly what he's doing. Perhaps the videos are simply a cleverly filmed presentation of an empty world, with Tricky only recording them to reinforce his own delusion that he is the last man on Earth.
My inner world has become what I see in the outer world. I block and I try and manage what everybody knows around me and doesn't know so that I can control the narrative of my life.
If this is the case, I suspect that a major traumatic event, such as the death of his brother, propelled him into the fantasy. Alternatively, it could just be caused by the social stresses that he's confided to the camera. Based on the most recent tape, Tricky already felt alone even before the world changed, so perhaps these tapes help affirm his perception of reality. His world felt empty, so through these tapes, Tricky also made it look empty. On this theory, Tricky's behavior would align in some ways with a condition known as maladaptive daydreaming. Now, to clarify, I myself don't have this condition, so I'm not very qualified to speak on it. However, as I understand it, maladaptive daydreaming is when an individual escapes into their own mind to evade the anxieties of their environment. In Tricky's case, it manifests as a world where he feels alone because there are no other people, not because he struggles to connect with the humans around him. The archivist, then, is likely some sort of psychologist reviewing Tricky's tapes in an effort to help him recover. The times when Tricky opens up to the camera may even reflect some part of himself that truly does want to be helped. Admittedly, thus far, we really haven't heard enough from the archivist to know what she thinks of Tricky. But maybe she's just waiting to review all the evidence before sharing her conclusions. The Nesters, then, are ordinary people that Tricky perceives as predatory monsters. Beings that don't just want to waste his time, but who want to destroy who he is entirely. That would explain why the stores never seem to run out of food, but it also makes Tricky's traps feel much more disturbing. I can only hope that they're another aspect of his delusion rather than a genuine application of deadly force. The Nesters' persistent attacks on Tricky reflect that there are probably people in Tricky's life who genuinely care about him and want him to feel better. But as he's repeated time and again, the majority of Tricky's mind doesn't want to get better. He doesn't want to grow, doesn't want to change. The delusion is comfortable, and reality is anything but. Whatever upcoming tapes may reveal about our subject, I can confidently say that Tricky is in a dark place, regardless of how much he tries to hide it, and it doesn't seem to be getting any lighter. Life is far too difficult to face alone. People can hurt you. They can hurt you very deeply. But the solution is not their absence. All of us are broken in some way or another, but brokenness cannot be undone by destruction. It can only be undone by mending what is old or by building something new. I recognize that some pains cannot be fixed and may at best be forgotten, but anyone who has struggled with loneliness knows it is a pain that cannot be forgotten until it is fixed. At times, it's good to be alone, but to always feel alone, even when you would give anything for companionship, is a fate that transforms every experience into a painful one. Tricky's story is an extraordinarily strange depiction of an unfortunately ordinary problem. The Glendale Archives challenge us to consider the consequences of pushing others away emotionally, mentally, and physically. Are the costs of isolating ourselves really worth the benefits? Not in my experience. Many of you have or will struggle with loneliness at some point in your lives. I certainly have. But don't give up hope. The people in your life right now may not be there for you as you need them to be, but someone out there loves you in exactly the way you need to be loved. Oddly, as I get to the end of writing this script, I realize that this series reminds me quite a lot of another topic I've covered on the channel, a Doom mod that tackles themes of loneliness, regret, and trauma. If you've watched to the end of this video and you'd like to hear my dumb voice a little longer, You can check out my video on myhouse.wad with the link on screen right now. And with that, I'm Crowmudgeon. Thanks for watching.